My soul retrieval tarot spread is definitely something that it's worth taking time over. I'm going to read this quite quickly because I'm taping, but if I was doing this for a client or for myself, I would really take some time over this. So the first thing you need to do is set your intent. Why are you doing this? Now, this isn't a prediction spread. If anything, this is a looking at your past spread to find the source of the problem. So I do struggle with relaxing and enjoying life. Always looking for the next problem. I guess one would call that slight paranoia. So that's what I'm going to read for. Why do I suffer from that slight feeling of panic that something bad is just round the corner? So shuffle. If you like to cut, cut. And the first three cards should be relatively easy to read. They are, how is your issue affecting you now? So with all of my spreads, you'll notice that the first cards are the easier cards to read. It is like a thread. It starts off easier, and you follow the thread until you get to the original sort of source wound. So Eight of Swords, it's leaving me feeling a little less self-confident than I should do, and this is absolutely true. The swords in the Rider-Waite deck represent words or minds. I've always coped with whatever problems life has thrown at me, which should leave me with more confidence rather than this slight feeling of paranoia. So it is a mind issue rather than a world issue. I would agree with that. Card 2, lack of security or too much security. I would argue that my parents, no parents are perfect, sadly, I have to agree, as being a parent myself. My parents did place a great deal of importance upon financial security, and it's left me feeling a little bit out of sync with financial understanding, financial planning. Yeah, I'm always waiting for the next big bill, which will throw me over the edge. That would make sense. And the Devil. Now, always an interesting card to come up with in shadow work, because it suggests that I am tying myself, because these represent me. I have chosen to identify with something outside of myself to pretend that's the reason I'm in this position. And I would put that down to politics, the system's unfair, I'm in this position because of the inequality in our country, etc, etc, etc. And that's all very valid, but feeling like a victim of the system doesn't help me to improve myself. I would say in any shadow work, these are probably two of the most interesting cards to get, because they suggest that I am in a victim mentality when it comes to this slight paranoia, and that I am feeding this cycle myself. So very interesting. Now, if you were doing this for yourself, I would suggest that you now journal, write this down, spend some time on it. What's key with this spread is that understanding this has changed me a little bit. So you shuffle. You leave those out and you shuffle. And now I'm going to ask, I've started with the present, something I can easily understand. Now I'm going to ask, so how has that affected me in the past? Slightly harder. Shuffle till it feels ready. I think cutting is important, not that it's essential, because it's clearly defining that I'm ready to read. Two cards. How has this shaped my life up to this point? Looking back over the past. Well, it's definitely affected my relationships. You know, when I met my husband, who was living up in Orkney in a croft, he'd escaped from the world. He was off grid, bit of a paranoia, bit of a prepper. You know, definitely one step further than I am on the paranoia. When I park my car, you know, he always says you always have to reverse in so that if you need to get out in a hurry, it's not a problem. Yes, it's definitely defined my relationships. I need to be with someone who has this slight sense of paranoia. I'm getting all the big cards here. Six of Cups. Now, I've got quite an in-depth blog on this if you want to head to my website. This, to me, is one of the darkest cards in the deck. It's to do with childhood, that's clear. But this cross here, this is St Andrew's cross, this is the Martyr's cross. There is a chap you can see here walking away, abandoning the children. The red hoods, you know, Little Red Riding Hood, Don't Look Now, Shadow of Wolves, Company of Wolves I think it's called. Red hoods in our myth and fairy tale in Western Europe, they are associated with danger. This is the martyred child. We have to martyr our children. When our children are 3 and 4, we tell them we can save them from anything, that will never die and they'll always be safe. At some point we have to allow them to fall down and learn from their mistakes. But I didn't have the most secure of childhoods, and certainly I had an issue with my father leaving at 4, etc, etc. I think that I've always looked back on my childhood as being a bit of, I'm linking this with the devil now. I'm like this because of my childhood. I'm like this because of my husband. I've allowed this to define who I am right the way back. I hope that makes sense. It's quite hard to do these quickly and for myself. Now you shuffle again. I wasn't quite expecting to see those 2 cards. That's good. That suggests that I am looking in places within that I haven't quite looked yet. I hadn't really paused to acknowledge how much my partner and I feed our slight paranoia. The next card is the Source. Now the first time you do this, and it's the first time I've done this for this question, you may not get the root source. You might get a source that you need to work on. So it's worth doing this several times, you know, over a few months, and see how the reading differs. Shuffle again. Pause to cut. 1 card. Going deeper still. 6 of Wands. Now I'm going to be very honest here and say, intuitively, and I'm going to have to think about this because I've never come across that in anything I've done, I'm having an image here of my actual birth. The 6s are all to do with unequal relationships. If you have a look at all your 6s, obviously I've already got a 6 here. Wands is to do with that burst of energy. So my intuitive understanding of this card is that this comes from my birth. I'm also getting a feeling that it comes from past life, but now I'm definitely going into the realms of intuitive tarot reading rather than understanding the symbology of the card. If I was going to work from the actual meaning of the card, I would say that whenever I was successful at school, my parents would definitely play it down. They were definitely of the attitude of, you've got to toughen your child up, not praise them for when they've done well. So perhaps that led me to think that I was never quite good enough and I always had to work slightly harder. What I will do is I will reserve that card, and at a later point when I have the time, I'll do some stonework with it and try and connect with that on a deeper level. Shadow work is often surprising. That's the joy of it. Shuffle again. Perhaps the 2 most important cards in the entire spread. Action cards. So you can clearly see here, I'm left with a slight feeling of paranoia about my financial and physical safety, definitely. You can see how it's come from childhood and how I have people around me that feed this. So what can I best do to move away from this? Shuffle again. And it's 2 cards this time. Cut the pack. Magician. Realise that I have everything I need to overcome. It's probably quite true. Overcoming this issue is a blend of the physical, the red roses represent the physical, and the spiritual, the inner journey. The white lilies represent the inner journey. And the feeling of stillness there. I've always felt with the magician, he is a lightning rod. He is pausing. He is awaiting that inspiration that is needed. So looking at that, and with the golden glow, the happiness, the joy there, and obviously the ritualistic nature of there, I'm going to say, to me, the action there is daily meditation. And I say that because of the blend. Now for me, meditation would be doing the runic stances that comes from my more Nordic tradition, and that's a physical meditation, it's moving meditation, and it should be a sort of a slightly ritualistic, you know, light a candle, doing it and allowing me to be in the moment. And strangely, this is actually one of our runic positions. So that's first action. Second action, Ten of Pentacles. I often say with the key with the Ten of Pentacles is to appreciate that it's not accumulating wealth, it's enjoying wealth. And I am very blessed. There are many things that I'm very lucky about in my life. We do have enough money. We do have enough money to pay for our kids' education. We live in a home that we enjoy. This is about enjoying my abundance. So I will take that on board. I will try to enjoy my abundance rather than, I am a bit of a hoarder. So enjoy rather than accumulate, and that daily runic yoga. Yeah, I can work with that.